Citroen C1 idle air control valve cleaning. Toyota engine fitted to the Citroen C1 Peugeot 107 Toyota aygo triplets has an electrically actuated idle control valve built into the throttle body. Just like the throttle body, it can get dirty and bunged up with coke and oil deposits, which can prevent proper operation. So what are dirty idle air control valve symptoms? You can get a rough idle, stalling at idle. Pulling away smoothly from a standstill can be difficult without revving the engine. And if you do a lot of city driving, a general loss of economy can ensue, along with some general jerkiness when you lift on and off the throttle pedal. Whilst not something to do at every service, idle air control valve cleaning is not an insignificant item and would benefit from being done probably about every 35 to 40,000 miles. So let's get right to it. Start by lifting away the air intake cover and lift the filter out of the way and keep it somewhere safe and clean. The idle air control valve and its actuator comes immediately into view on the side of the throttle body just here. Disconnect the electrical connector by pressing down on this tag on the top of the connector here and pulling it off. Also disconnect the throttle position sensor by pressing the tag on the side of the connector and pulling backwards. Unhook the throttle cable from its spring clip. No need to disconnect the throttle cable from the throttle body. The idle control valve is fixed to the side of the throttle body by two screws, one here and one directly opposite on the other side of the actuator, which you cannot see in this view, but you cannot get directly onto the one we can't see because of the connection of the fuel rail over here. So we're going to have to remove the throttle body, which fortunately is extremely easy. The throttle body is held to the inlet manifold by three screws, one at the front here and two at the back, which you'll probably need an inspection mirror to get to see. One here with a 10mm socket and a medium length extension. I'm using a 1/4 inch socket set here. Undo those three screws. I suggest you get all three slackened off first before removing any of them. And then I'm undoing the rear two the rest of the way, just using the extension bar and the socket without the ratchet handle. And the throttle body just lifts off the inlet manifold and you can bring it forward, place it somewhere safe. You can see the three fixing points clearly in this view. And now that we've got the throttle body off, you can see the two fixings that hold the idle air control valve in place. And the big problem with these fixings is not only can you not get directly onto this lower one, but by trying to get directly onto them with a Phillips head screwdriver, I've managed to gnarl both fixings up. So with a cloth in place or using a suitable bowl, press hard into the fixings, make sure you get on them square and undo both and remove them. I'm going to replace those screws when we put this back together. I'll show you what with in a few moments. Very gently waggle and pull the idle control valve out of place. Make sure you rescue that O-ring. You'll be needing that to put it back together. Without that, you'll get air leaks. The air duct starts here on the open side of the butterfly, passes through the throttle body, past the idle air control valve and through to this hole where it passes into the inlet manifold. The actuator on the motor controls the airflow through this duct by either retracting or inserting this conical valve into the hole at the bottom of this cavity here. Now this idle control valve is quite clean and operating perfectly freely because I've been keeping it clean through the life of this vehicle. But if your car's done, let's say 100,000 miles or so, and it's only had its oil changed at the regular recommended intervals, then it's quite possible that this ducting and this at the end of this valve is absolutely chocker with coke and oil residues. Clean it up with some carburetor cleaner spray or brake cleaner. Use a cloth on here to clean it up. Use a Q-tip or a nylon bottle brush to clean the inside of the cavity in there and swill it all away, making sure to catch the runoff on either a cloth or in a bowl. I mentioned that I'm replacing the screws. The screws that came out are M4 by 12. I'm putting M4 by 16s in. Don't go to M4 by 20. You'll damage the throttle body if you do. And these ones that I managed to pick up have a security Torx head and take a T20 Torx bit. But you can get similar screws that have a hex recess or a non-security Torx recess. When putting it back together, make sure that the O-ring is in place and just very lightly lubricate it with a little silicone grease and put the valve back into the aperture with the part number here facing the throttle position sensor. nip the screws up hand tight. The inlet manifold has a rubber formed gasket between itself and the throttle body, so there's no paper gasket to be replaced. Just give the gasket a good clean all the way around and maybe give it a very, very light smear of silicone grease. And after that, putting it all back together is the exact opposite of taking it apart. Nip the fixings on the throttle body down reasonably hand tight. Don't forget to reconnect your connectors because your car won't run at all well without those. If you got value from this video, please consider supporting the channel in some way. There's a list of ways you can do that down in the description, along with some links to parts and materials you might need, and I shall see you next time.